Hello there. In this video, I'll show you how to recognise a clocked car using my very own Nissan Primera P12 as a genuine real-life example. And that means, hang on, bear with me, having a good look inside this yellow folder. Welcome to CarSpyTV. Okay, let's start with the basics. What is a clocked car? Well, as you know, every car has its current mileage written down there on the dashboard. A clocked car has had that mileage deliberately wound back to make it appear more valuable and desirable. Now, if you inadvertently buy a clocked car, you've got three problems. Number one, you pay too much money. Number two, the car has more wear and tear than you expect, which in turn costs you more money in repairs. And number three, you're going to struggle to sell the car on in the future. And that's because knowledgeable buyers are going to recognise it's clocked and they're going to run away fast. And they're going to run away far. You'll struggle to even see them. So clearly, buying a clocked car can ruin your day, but it is possible to minimise the risk. And here's how I do it. This folder over here contains every piece of paper I have for my Nissan Primera from the day it was made in 2005 all the way up to the present day. And what I'm going to do is go through this folder and extract every single piece of paper that has a mileage recorded on it alongside a date. And I suggest you do the same for any car you might buy. So that's every piece of paper without exception that has the mileage written on it alongside a date. Here are those extracted documents, and as you can see, I've put each one into one of three categories. Category 1, over here on the left, this is the service history, i.e. that's a record of routine maintenance. Category 2, here in the middle, this is all the bills, so it's bills for servicing, new tyres, repairs, anything and everything. And finally, Category 3, over here on the right, this is all the MOT certificates from the very first one up to the current day. Now, if you're outside the UK, you may not know what an MOT is. In simple terms, it's an inspection that confirms your car meets minimum safety and environmental standards. And typically, you need it once your car is 3 years old and then annually thereafter. So let's start with Category 1, Service History, which is this little book. Every time the car was serviced, the mechanic wrote down the date, the mileage, and then put a little rubber stamp in the book that confirmed the name and address of the garage that completed the work. And that information is really handy when we're trying to figure out whether or not the car's been clocked. Now, there are two things we want to see in this service history book. Number one, the car's mileage should rise throughout its life. Clearly, it should never ever fall. And number two, date-wise, we want to see regular entries. For example, once every year or so. We don't want big multi-year gaps. So let's have a look at the first entry here. Bear in mind this car was new in March 2005. The first entry is September 2005 at 3,500 miles. So that's our starting point. The next entry here is 2006, just a few months later at 6,500 miles. So we can see the mileage has risen. It has not fallen back. The next entry here is 2007. And again, the mileage has risen rather than falling, this time to 15,000. And this is the story throughout the car's life. So look, we have more entries there for 2007, 8, 8, 9, 10, 10, and it continues over the page for every single year, all the way up to 2021, at which point the car had done 117,973 miles. And every single one of these service stamps shows the mileage rising. It never ever falls. And also, there are no big multi-year gaps. Imagine, for example, that there was a 5-year gap where the mileage wasn't recorded. Well, naturally, that wouldn't prove the car's been clocked, but it would mean the document is less convincing at suggesting otherwise. Now, I would suggest it's unwise to completely trust a document like this unless you verify its contents because, well, It could be faked quite easily. So what we need to do is look among the rest of the paperwork for evidence that suggests this document is genuine. Now, do you remember that I showed you that the second entry in this service book was in 2006 at about 6,500 miles? Well, if we look among the invoices, we find this, which is Nissan branded, and it too says the car was serviced at the stated mileage, on the stated date, and by the stated garage. So this document, this invoice, suggests the stamp in the service book is genuine, and I've got all these invoices here so I can verify many of the other stamps as well. Now, of course, it's true that a crook who clocks a car can fake a service book and fake all these invoices, but that does become increasingly unlikely. And also, if you don't have invoices to verify these stamps in your service book, you can phone the garages that allegedly completed the work and just say, look, I'm interested in buying this car. Here's the registration plate. Can you please confirm that you serviced it on this date at this mileage? Some garages will tell you, no, go away. Others will help. Either way, you have nothing to lose by asking and potentially a lot to gain. There are other ways the invoice can suggest whether or not a car has been clocked. Let's say, for example, that you're looking at one and the mileage stated on the dashboard down there is only 25,000. That's very little in a modern car. But hang on, what's this? Perhaps we have an invoice for a brand new clutch. Perhaps there's another one here for a head gasket, and more here for multiple sets of new tyres. Cars with 25,000 miles on the clock don't typically need a new clutch, head gasket, and multiple sets of tyres. Such things are indicative of higher mileage. So, when you're evaluating a car, consider whether the work that's been done to it is consistent with its age and mileage. And that brings us to the third category of paperwork, which is MOT certificates. And we assess these in much the same way as we assess the service history a little earlier on. So we start with the oldest certificate, which for my car is dated March 2008, and we check the mileage, which was 31,456, and then we work our way through all these subsequent certificates, making sure, of course, that the mileage always rises and never ever falls. At this point, it's a good idea to further cross-reference the documents from the three categories I showed you earlier to see whether or not they verify each other. For example, it would be suspicious to see an invoice from 2015 that states a higher mileage than the MOT certificate from the following year. That may be indicative of clocking. It's also important to consider the condition of a car when deciding whether or not it's been clocked. In other words, decide whether the wear and tear is consistent with the claimed mileage. This isn't necessarily as easy as it sounds because different cars wear at different rates. So, in an ideal world, try and compare like with like. If, for example, you're interested in a Ford Fiesta that's allegedly done 50,000 miles, try and compare it to other Fiestas of the same age which have done similar miles, fewer miles, and more miles. That is more useful than comparing it to a totally different car. Now, if you want further peace of mind, you can get an independent history report all about the car you might buy from any one of countless companies here in the United Kingdom. This report may confirm whether or not there's any evidence that the car's been clocked. It may also reveal whether the car's been stolen, whether the current owner still owes finance on it, and many other things. In fact, I wouldn't buy a second-hand car without a report, but some reports are far better than others. They're far more comprehensive, so make sure you know what you're buying. Cheapest isn't necessarily best. So, what do you reckon then? Do you think this Nissan Primera P12 has been clocked? Well, we have a lifetime of service history, invoices and MOT certificates, all of which show the mileage rising consistently throughout the car's life. Additionally, there are no multi-year gaps where there's no documentation to help prove the mileage. As I said earlier, a gap doesn't prove a car's been clocked, but it might make you suspicious. I also have an independent history report over there that confirms there were no issues at the point I bought it. So I think we can be 99% sure that car isn't clocked and the mileage is genuine. Which is good. Okay, we have a few final points to consider. Number 1, when you're evaluating a document, just take a moment to make sure it's for the correct car. I, for example, could chuck this into any other old Nissan and most people would assume it's for that car, which it clearly is not. So just take a moment to make sure that it's got the right registration number on it, maybe even the VIN number, both in this case. Also, bear in mind that everything we've talked about in this video is about minimizing the risk of buying a clocked car, not eliminating it. You can't eliminate it. The only way to be absolutely sure the mileage is genuine is to buy a car brand new. You may also want to bear in mind that I've written this book. It's called How to Buy the Right Used Car, and it guides you through the entire process in simple, easy to follow steps. It's available at Amazon, and I'll leave a link in the description of this video that takes you straight to it. And as you can see, it's fairly chunky. Feel free to buy 1,000 copies. Anyway, that's all for now. Don't forget to subscribe to CarSpyTV for more content. Do me a favour and click like on this video. And I'll see you next time, once I've put all this paperwork away. Bye.